right, well, welcome. Today we've got three experts, including myself, that are going to talk to you a little bit about Chronicle security operations. Now, this is just a quick little, 25-minute seminar, webinar, whatever you want to call it. So we won't dive a whole lot into details. We're hoping to teach you some stuff and, kind of whet your appetite for Chronicle, especially if you're using other SIEMs. We're going to start off today. Let me go ahead and pull up the introduction. Dr. Logan Song, who is one of my colleagues, along with Rich Foltak, our CISO, and myself will be talking. You'll hear more about each of us as we go. As David said before the recording, please do put your questions just directly into the chat. We'll take a look on them as we go through the meeting. And, we have set aside quite a bit of time for going through them. Additionally, speaking of questions, we did have a question that came in before this even started, and I thought it was quite interesting. It applies a little bit more to the a speech I'm doing on November 15th. If anybody is in the Nashville area, FutureCon, I'll be speaking at that. And December 6th, Rich will be speaking at the Atlanta FutureCon. David, correct me if I got those wrong. But, please do ask questions. They can be oblique. We love solving problems. And, Logan, Rich, and myself are three people who just love brainstorming. And one of our specialties is solving problems that have never been solved before. So sometimes those hard ones are what get us interested and talking about things. But the question that came in, let me read it. It was, with so many alerts coming through along with lean security team, how can we prioritize what needs to be a priority and what needs to be ignored? So, I mean, you could not pick a more classic cybersecurity question than that. Too many alerts, too small a staff, how to prioritize. I mean, that is basically kind of SecOps 101 right there. The good news is that, two of the things that we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk a lot about Chronicle, but we're also going to talk about the artificial intelligence capabilities that are built in, bolted in, baked into Chronicle that Google has been working on for literally almost a decade. With Google is the largest employer of AI engineers in the world. They have almost 6,000 of them. And I think you're going to see some pretty amazing stuff that will do exactly what you're looking for to augment things. But in general, I would answer that question by saying that is SecOps, and that comes under what we call alert fatigue. And the biggest things is really taking the alerts that come in, documenting the false positives, i.e. the ones that aren't needed, and then working to remove them, because you've got to winnow them down. You've got to talk to the vendors that are there. Alerts that just keep alerting are just fatigue. Use automation. We're going to talk a little bit about SOARs. Some of you may not know what that is, and we're going to talk about that. And then additionally, we'll talk about playbooks and that artificial intelligence, both of which can fix it. But overall, you've got a universe problem. You got to know what the anomalous behavior is before you can go ahead and say this is not something we need to worry about. That requires brainstorming. That's a lot of something that we bring into a lot of SecOps. So a little bit about myself. My name is Kevin A. McGrail. Most people call me Cam. I am a cloud fellow and the principal evangelist at Dito. We help, basically migrate, modernize, and secure the cloud, especially Google. And, we love doing it. I'm going to talk today a little bit about what is Chronicle and, the backups of what is a SIEM, etc. I am getting some feedback though, so if people could mute, that would be good. Other than that, Rich Foltak is then going to talk about, where we are, where we're going. And then Logan is going to talk about the artificial intelligence and natural language processing capabilities. David will then follow it up with just kind of a thanks and how we can help. So without further ado, this is, my Chronicle about Chronicle. So a lot of people aren't really aware of where Chronicle came from. But, very simply, many years ago, we started with SIEMs. Even just things like syslog was a SIEM. All that did was basically a gathering of logs, an SIEM. It then evolved into a SIEM, and that is basically where we were doing monitoring of those logs for anomalous events. So things that were unusual that needed to be alerts on. So that was a SIEM. So originally they were two different products. When they got merged, it became a SIEM again, but the E became silent. I don't know why, just probably to confuse people. But later, and companies like Carbon Black really were some of the companies that pushed this in the beginning. We got something called SOAR that was an add-on to a SIEM. And it's basically stands for security, orchestration, and autonomous response. What it can do is take the logs that are monitored with events and then do automated actions based on those. So this starts to be what we would refer to largely as some sort of artificial intelligence. It's a predefined decision points that are made to do things. So it could be just blocking an IP address if it's doing something simple. That would be a very, very simple autonomous response. But it can be much, much more complex. It can build into things we call playbooks. That's what one of the companies that Google acquired specializes in. And that kind of led to Chronicle. So Chronicle, to some extent, is a product that came around in the 2012 era. It came around because Google got hacked very, very badly by the Chinese Communist Party, is who it's attributed to. And that was called Project Aurora. I mentioned that name because I'm going to bring up a little neat fact that I hope you guys like to learn a little bit about cybersecurity, which is one of my areas of expertise. But at that point, basically, Google realized they had been hacked. They didn't have the visibility they needed, but they had a lot of servers, and so they needed to build a typical Google, what they call planet scale or Google scale product that could handle just petabytes of data coming in all at once from just tons and tons of servers, et cetera, and really handle things in an amazing way. And this is what you see with Google with their background, but I won't steal too much thunder away. I want to give a short introduction here for them. But then Google bought Simplify. They took all the best parts of Simplify SIEM, put them in Chronicle, took the SOAR and the playbook capabilities out of Simplify and put them into Chronicle. And so Chronicle SIEM and Chronicle SOAR are now a best of breed product. They can take, literally petabytes of information. They use the cloud. They can use artificial intelligence, and they can take those, automated responses to kind of the next level. So that's a little bit about what Chronicle is. I won't keep harping on that too much, but I will play a video, and I'm going to watch the chat while the video plays. Now, this is only about a minute-long video. If you've seen it before, please do let other people give the answer. But what you're going to see in this video is this generator blow up. And I'll tell you why. But if you watch the little, that cone that's in this, you'll probably see it the best. And I realize that clicking on the video in my Meet is not going to work. I got to click on it over here. All right. So this was from 2007 from the DoD, and it was the Operation Aurora.
Yes.
All right. So I will ask a question. I'd love to know if anybody gets the right answer. But yeah, David, anybody seen or heard of this? And if you'd like to unmic or chat, anybody know the significance of that very boring video I just showed you of a generator exploding? And guesses are fine. I will only ridicule you for a minute or two if you're completely wrong. All right, I'm not hearing any takers whatsoever. Well, what that is that's an area of cyber that I played a lot in up until when I came to Dito. So I came out of the nuclear sector, worked in critical infrastructure, and we do a type of cyber called OT cyber or operational technology cyber. An old boss of mine had a great definition of that. Operational technology is anything that can touch the physical world. So building access control systems, garage door openers, motor operated valves, building access systems, et cetera. Those are operational technology. All of a sudden, when they get plugged into IT, is a lot of times when you get the problems. OT may not have any security, may not have any problems with this. And there's even been some missteps. Google had to change their home devices because people had realized they could walk up to front doors of people with automated locks and say things like, "Okay, Google, open my front door." And all of a sudden it would unlock. They'd have to yell it through a window possibly, but that didn't work very well. So now with Google Locks, for example, they had to learn from that, and you can only lock them. You can't unlock them with a voice command. So anyway, I thought I'd show you that. It's just kind of interesting because that was Operation Aurora, which was, as far as I know, the first documented case of an IT attack on an OT device causing physical harm. This was what effectively led to what is known as Operation Olympic Gold, or OG, which most people know as Stuxnet, which was an attack on the Iranian enrichment facility, likely done between the US and Israel. But anyway, I will now hand it over to Rich if I can get the slides to go the right direction. Hold on, it's playing. Don't play. How do I get it to stop? I don't know. Trying to get there we go. All right, so just a little bit about Rich. Rich led Mayo, going on to Google, Mayo Clinic, one of the finest clinics on the planet. Additionally, he worked at Cisco. He ran Verizon's data for networks and their NOC. He's now our CISO and helps us lead many engagements, including leading our American Express Amex engagement. So without further ado, though, I will hand it off to Rich, and hopefully the slides will go ahead. There we go. Where are we going? Where are we and where are we going, Rich?
Thank you, Cam. Can you go to the next slide, because I don't seem to have the access to move the slides. I won't talk long for the slides, but I thank you again, Cam. So I've been in the security business for over 30 years, and the reality is as Cam was pointing out, that the SIEM to the SIEM and now SOAR, the SOC has been around for a very long time, and even though the critical roles it has within the organization, it's still operating very much the same way for decades. I mean, yeah, some of the tools are modifying or so forth, but it's still really about ingest logs, look at logs, and this is where you get alert fatigue, because everything is all about processing logs, turning logs into alerts into sort of systems, and it is a very, very old problem for a very modern world where new technologies are coming out. The amount of logs, the amount of information you're trying to process is just huge, and it's the challenges we're having here in the industry is that it's all consumption based, and a lot of people still running their SIEMs on premise, and basically the big joke is that the SIEM is basically overflowing at the SIEM, right? Like at the seams, right? For all intents and purposes. And so the current technologies are just not set up for the future. And what do we mean by that, not set up for the future? Because it's not just about looking at logs from the traditional way of just seeing specific things. New technologies, new techniques are coming in, such as AI, which requires a different set of technologies altogether to take advantage of. So you're dealing with an issue where you got just not enough capacity in terms of storage, and you've got not enough capacity in terms of the talent to take a look at it. And so if you really look deep down behind what's going on, is you've got a big data problem. And the reality is most security engineers are not data scientists. And this is where you got to start relooking at your problem in a very, very different ways. And so, as you look at the way a big data individual looks at it, is like, give me more data. The more data I have, the more visibility I have, the more I can actually take advantage of what's going on. Yet if you look at a lot of environments that I've been involved with, whether it was Deloitte or Verizon or others, the whole idea was, hold on, data costs me money. I just want to give some sort of a sample of the logs to the SIEM, because you're dealing with a situation that the more logs I feed it, the more it costs me to process it, to store it, to maintain it. This is just counterproductive in terms of how to look at your entire problem. And so what we're basically saying is that as a big data problem, if you start looking at your SOC as a big data problem, you can now start looking at things like taking advantage of all this innovation that has taken place in the cloud with respect to business intelligence tools, AI tools, and others that are in play. And so we're just pointing out the fact that the amount of work needed for a SOC to be effective is increasing dramatically. The threat landscape, which is rarely ever mentioned, is significantly increasing, because we live in a world, just look today, we have state actors you got to worry about. And what that means, we're talking about not your typical criminal elements that are just trying to get ransomware out of you. We're talking about states that may see you as a critical resource and they just want to shut you down. You have activists, you have employees at your company who may not agree with what the US is doing or what your company is doing, and they may want to look at disrupting you for those particular purposes. So you don't just have to look at outsiders, you've got to look at things from the inside. So the need to be able to be intelligent, to look at the world and respond faster is just incredible nowadays. And the old methodologies that were out there just don't work anymore. And that's really what it comes down to. And so like we do want to also highlight the fact that sometimes even the new technologies are a bit of a problem. So we came back 3 weeks ago I was at MWise, which is Mandiant's big show in terms of capabilities. But one of the things that they do as part of their tools and bringing intelligence into your solution set is they evaluate, they look out in the wild and see what's going on. And they came upon a very interesting hack, a breach that took place that actually did social engineering on a large language AI model. And you're kind of thinking, wait, hold on, how do you socially engineer against an AI? Well, what they did, and this is kind of hilarious, but also starts to make sense, is that one of the ways the tools work in scanning software is they're actually looking for the 3-letter acronym CVE, which is really your threat identifier. And so if you go into the Mitri attack vectors and the mapping and all of the naming conventions, they actually pull out the names and saying, this is the attack vector I'm using to exploit whatever. And so thankfully, most hackers comment their hacks and tell you how they're hacking it. And so the AI reads the code, sees what it does, looks at the vectors and says, hey, this is an actual exploit. It's not a backdoor automation to install something in PowerShare. It's actually trying to do something bad. And why? Because they mentioned CVE. Well, this particular hacker went in and said, I want to install puppies on my system. Yes, the word puppies. And they actually went in, puppies are good. The more puppies you put in a system, the better. And the AI actually went in and said, yes, puppies are good. Puppies should be encouraged. Puppies should be let in. And so this is where we're kind of looking at the fact that you've always have to deal with a world that it's an arms race. Technologies are changing. The type of attacks that are going to be coming in are going to be very different. You need to be aware of that. And so while we're talking about Chronicle, we also have to talk about where are we today, right? And that's predominantly a Splunk type platform. Can we go to the next slide? So why Splunk? What's going on with Splunk? Well, Splunk is the big daddy of all of the SIEMs out there. And it has served its purpose really, really well and has done a good job protecting the environment. The problem is, and this keeps showing up over and over at the executive level, is the cost. The joke goes now that do you know why Cisco Systems bought Splunk? Because it was cheaper to buy the company than to buy the licenses. And that's kind of what's really happening out there, is that the cost of maintaining this, the more you look at what's going on from a compliance perspective, SIEMs are necessary. You do NIST cybersecurity controls or others, they tell you, do you have a SIEM? Do you have this? Do you have that? So a lot of companies are looking at it purely from a checkbox compliance perspective, but they're not really looking at it from what is the SOC doing for me? How am I able to respond to the threats in a much more aggressive perspective? And so the ability to scan multidimensionality of the data that you have, to look at data correlation, do other stuff, is a challenge. Or for Splunk, you actually have to buy extra modules to add to the overall cost in terms of how you manage that. And so it becomes a big, big challenge. And so one of the things that we want to talk about when we introduce is Chronicle, like, why is this even relevant? So today, Chronicle is viewed as a SIEM alternative. It is a SIEM, but it's more than a SIEM. It does everything a SIEM does and goes further. But years ago, for the last few years, Google has been selling Chronicle as a SIEM augmentation tools for some of their biggest Fortune 1000 customers. And I want to introduce Mike. Mike, if you're on, can you kind of introduce yourself and tell me, the specific use case? Because Mike used to work for a company that actually enabled Chronicle in their environment.
Which I think Mike is tied up with a client meeting.
Of course he is. Okay, so no, my mistake. But one of the issues right now, and what Mike was going to kind of provide in his testimonial is as part of the overall slide deck, which we will share, is the fact that they were not able to get access to the information they needed quickly. So being able to search and go through your data and quickly identify what's going on is a major success factor in having a solid SIEM platform in your environment. And the speed to data is very important, especially the ability not only to speed, but also look at the logs for the last year. How often did a particular attack or situation occur in my environment, and be able to pull that data out of your ecosystem. And in this particular case, the ability to get a data in minutes rather than days became a major distinction, a major advantage that Chronicle brought to the table that their current SIEM just did not. There are other aspects in terms of investigation capabilities, right? The way it's integrated, the Mitri attack mappings. The fact is that these attacks most of the time are following a known script, a known pattern that is well documented by various industry bodies. And so Chronicle has actually documented that, built it into their product, and actually can scan your environment associated to the types of attacks that you're seeing. And then tie that into the intelligent feeds that Google shares with Chronicle, so that it has the ability to look at your data from a new light when new information is provided, is really where you can really focus on building a solid security operations center that traditionally was just not possible. And so we wanted to highlight the fact that, hey, why you have to seriously consider leaving on-prem for your SIEM is because you're not going to invest in the TPUs and the GPUs needed to build AI into your overall solution. You're going to go through a migration path to the cloud, even Splunk Cloud. Again, it's a legitimate platform there. But when you start looking at the capabilities around AI, which Logan is about to kind of get into, and the time to value, Chronicle is the platform of choice, and that we are going out and aggressively pursuing our customers moving forward. Yes, Kim.
Yeah, so there was a question from Clifford. What he asked about was, for applications that are in the cloud and not on my network, will Chronicle track traffic still for that cloud application?
Well, it's all about your forwarders and how you feed it. So yes, the answer is, all these platforms have a way of forwarding your logs into your environment. And the question then becomes, what are you feeding it? Application logs, that's definitely one source. They have pre-built connectors to AWS, GCP, Azure. So if you're in one of those particular platforms, it's relatively easy to bind into the existing feeders, for whether it's AWS with the cloud logging capability there, Google with its cloud logging, and Azure has its own cloud logging sort of platforms. So whether it's using something like a PubSub or a Kafka feeding mechanism from those clouds into Chronicle, it definitely has those capabilities. And obviously the same goes with on-prem. You have a forwarding secure tunneled approach or a VPN or a interconnect type approach that you can leverage to securely move your logs from on-premise to the cloud. And then the cloud can consume and service those logs in the manner that makes most sense for you, in a tenant that is dedicated for your particular business, for your SOC to be able to consume and do all of the capabilities you as a SOC team needs to do.
Thank you. That answers the question. Yeah, keep the questions coming, Clifford. If that didn't answer it, please let me know, and I'll read. No, he says excellent, so I think you did well. So, all right, you passed. You get an A.
All right, so I want to now kind of move over, because I think the AI integration is one of the areas where Google shines. It is recognized in the industry as one of the 2 top leading AI platforms. relative to OpenAI and then Google. So I want to introduce Logan, who's our chief cloud architect. He's an adjunct professor at the University of Texas and an expert in cloud and AI. He's presented in many international conferences, including Google Next, the AWS Tech Summits, and he has published 2 books around AI. So Logan, off to you.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Cam. Can we move to the next slide?
Absolutely, though you should be able to do it yourself, but I'll take care of it otherwise.
Thank you. Yeah, you can continue. Actually, it's a dynamic. So, Kim, just keep going. Yes, thank you. So, so AI, right? This century, we see AI booming. The first computer, as we all know, like last century, like 1946, something like that. Right after the first computer, AI, the concept came in, but like 50 years, we didn't do anything really, really good until this century, right? So we have cloud computing coming in, and the computing power was unlocked actually 2006, and then 2012, right? Jeff Hinton and the Toronto team came in, brought deep learning. That actually changes so much. And Google has been always in the front of AI, right? We all know it. That's what the things, what the Google is good at that, right? And the recent years, like we have, OpenAI, ChatGPT, and then of course Google generative AI and Dual AI, right? So adding this AI elements into Chronicle will make it intelligent and do quick checking all the leads and look at all the data and automate all the things, right? So we see that generative AI will simplify data analysis, check the leads, and generate diagrams and other visual aids for the analysis, right? We're making it more human being, more interactive, right? The wider AI will summarize the ongoing incidents and provide recommendations and for remediation and all those things, right? So both generative AI and the wide AI will allow a person or an operator without any, technical query language background to issue a text or voice command. Of course, that relates to how do we ask the question, right? It's always, how do we best ask the question, ask the best questions, right? And that comes with prompt engineering. Or we'll probably talk more on that later on, right? So, Kim, the next slide. Yeah, yes. So really, like Google is good at AI, good at search engine, right? So we view it Chronicle as an intelligent search engine, right? We can do anything, a huge capacity of such anything across the huge amount of data quickly, right? And also we view it as an auto detection and remediation system. AI, one of the best thing is anomaly detection, right? So, in the future, we vision it as looking at the data or the patterns of your working space, right? So we know that set day, nothing is going on and not many people are working, but all of a sudden something happened, right? So it's an anomaly, right? So AI will detect that. So at the end of the day, right, considering all the AI elements adding to Chronicle, we vision it Chronicle as an integrated modern pipeline, right? It's highly automated, highly interactive, highly intelligent, and it's a defense system with voice and text control. And that's really, the picture of the future of AI, Chronicle. Back to David. Right, let's go to the next one. I'm not sure if Kim can switch to the next slide. I think he stepped away, right, Dave?
Yeah, I think we're just going to kind of close out here in just a minute. But yeah, thanks Logan, Cam, and Richard. I did have a few questions that I got via email before the event from folks as they registered. So I wanted to go ahead and read those off, and perhaps we could spend just a few minutes addressing those, and then we'll close out here. So first of all, you've already sort of addressed this, Rich, maybe when you were talking about the other question from Clifford, but one customer writes, we use AWS, not GCP. Does Chronicle require us to use Google Cloud? Can we feed logs from our primary systems of other cloud environments?
Nope. It is an independent platform away from Google Cloud. It is not tied to Google Cloud, although it has built easier feeds to automatically feed it, but the reality is it is just as easy to integrate from AWS as it is to Azure, as it is on-prem. So the idea is that it is a SaaS-based solution out in the cloud, but it takes advantage of the entire infrastructure investment Google has put into its overall cloud platform.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. So just clarification there, it just because it's sold from Google Cloud, but it is applicable and usable in multi-cloud environments. Okay. Can you discuss what's involved in moving from an existing SIEM Chronicle? I know you spent a few minutes talking about Splunk. I'm sure there are others that folks are using, but if you can spend just a few minutes talking about the transition path, should they want to look at more of a modern cloud-based SIEM?
So one of the things we do is we refer to as like offering what I call as an MVP, right? A minimal viable platform or a minimum viable SOC. Because what you typically find out is you ask the question, what are you currently collecting? What should you be collecting? Because those two don't always align, right? And the idea is finding out what good looks like for you specifically. There is a predefined set of pre-built forwarders that could be just added to the agents, to various technologies, to essentially pull the existing logs into Google, into the Chronicle ecosystem, to essentially start looking at get what you're already feeding your other SIEM. So in other words, we're not saying kill your existing platform before you move your data to this new environment. But then you start looking at what is it that I really want to get out of this new environment? Because if you're just feeding and creating two dashboards, I kid you not, we had a big client, shocking, and it's like, and you're talking to the executive, and it's like, yeah, our SOC team just gives us two dashboards visibility, and they tell us who from the outside is coming into our data and where's all our data leaving to the outside. If that's your perception of and what you're doing with the SOC today, you are seriously not looking at what's happening in your environment with any decent breadth. And this was an institution that dealt with healthcare and other factors. It's actually was kind of shocking when we were talking to them. But the idea really comes down to is, are you getting the right data? Are you getting all your data? Are you getting visibility into what's happening? And sometimes that what's happening, what's critical is happening at the endpoints. You need to have that complete view of what's happening in your environment, and not just necessarily who's taking data out from your internet gateways. And so that also means visibility at the Windows instance. Is someone plugging in a USB port into their environment? Are they pulling data off of it? Are you allowing for that? Again, every company has a different security posture. So I wanted to just call that out, that you have to look at it holistically across your organization, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable in terms of how your employees work. But the reality is you want to have as a holistic view of what's happening in your environment, to have that mapping of how insiders and outside threat attackers are actually doing things in your environment. I'm going to call out a particular, we were talking with a school system, a school district, and they were looking at, protecting their environments. And I'm like, if you had only known what's happening in my kid's school, okay, here in Florida, and it's not a comment in Florida, they're well funded, they've got their things, but all their systems are hacked. The kids are playing video games on their systems because they've allowed themselves to get into the environment. And why are you hyper-focused on external attackers when you've got thousands of kids that are frankly your biggest threat, right? And because they know more than your administrators. So we want to just call that out, that it's important for you to really look at what is it that you need to collect. And we do this analysis with you. What does good look like? And then we focus on migrating these workloads before we start turning you off into where you are today. So that's part of our overall sort of migration strategy. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. And you sort of touched on the complimentary workshop that was on the screen, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. I've got 3 more quick questions. Maybe we can try to breeze through it. And if anything else has popped up, folks, please feel free to put them in the chat room. How does I know this is a relatively new integration, but how does Mandiant's threat intelligence layer into Chronicle? I thought they were separate solutions.
So they are, and I'll take this particular call. One of the things about creating policies and rules is actually one of the most difficult aspects even though I'm sure Kevin has a comment on Yara, but the issue here is having to design your own rules is rather complicated for many security engineers. They're more like, okay, this is what's happening. Can you please define that rule for me in a way that I can consume it? And that's actually one of the things that Mandiant does for you. It identifies threats, and it also gives you the quick, easy sort of rule to imply into your environment so that you could immediately not only just implement the rule, but also scan all your historical views to say, hey, I know that Mandiant just announced that there's this vulnerability and it's being exploited by whatever, but just being able to grab that rule and define and saying, am I exploitable? Like, it's not even have I been exploited, but being able to look into your data and see whether or not that attack vector is in fact applicable to you, and have you been exploited through this even historically? Because just because it's announced today does not mean attackers are, that's the start point. It could very well be that it's been an attack vector that's been around for a while, and that you should be able to have visibility into that. And this is where having these integrations and getting more deep dives into how various attackers are leveraging these exploits, that's what Mandiant brings to the overall equation, amongst other things. And Cam, if you want to chime in on that, I'd be happy for you to chime in.
No, I think you did a great job on it. I mean, I don't really talk too much about it, but there's lots of great threat intel, and the key point really is just that Chronicle does a great job of being able to pull in lots of different threat intel, including Mandiant's virus totals, etc. So, threat data is a really great way to augment your incident response data, even just sometimes looking up IP addresses and things like that. So,
great. Two more. Can you briefly explain how Chronicle overlaps or complements other existing tooling in GCP, for instance, Security Command Center?
So Security Command Center is a great tool. It has a feature that I widely recommend and use called Event Threat Detection or Container Threat Detection, which has a bunch of pre-built views that are very, let's just say, Google-centric. The reality of the matter is that Security Command Center is today, I'm not going to speak about the future, but today it is built around a very Google-centric, Google ecosystem-centric view of security. Chronicle is a much more generic way of looking at your overall aspect. And it really doesn't look at security as where are your findings, where are your vulnerabilities, which is what Security Command Center does. And it also has the ability to go in and tell you that you can actually build event monitoring, like how many incidences. You can also build like automations into Security Command Center, but they're very, how should I put it, like modular, where you just put some code into the mechanism and you can actually trigger automation inside of the framework. But when you look at things like SOAR is a playbook, and a playbook, well, one, Chronicle is agnostic to your cloud. So even though Google input comes in, it's not focused the same way as Google Cloud is, knowing all the ins and outs and backdoors, I wouldn't say backdoors, but visibility of the metadata of the configurations and the setups inside of each resource in Google Cloud. Security Command Center has that visibility. A SIEM sees the world from its logs, its events, it's what's happening in the environment. And so when things are seen, you want a mechanism that involves an automation. Now, what automation does not mean it's 100% end-to-end automated. It may require a human to review and say, yes, move forward, no, block this, this is not an acceptable response, or give some sort of a generic view of the world. And so the two can be seen as complementary, but one is more focused on NetSec and InfoSec teams, which if you look at it in a large enterprise perspective is very separated from a security operations center team. SOC teams tend to focus across the entire ecosystem of requirements, while InfoSec and NetSec teams look at putting preventative controls in your environment and having visibility and monitoring around, that type of a solution, like how well are things going? Well, the SOC is very focused on events and incidences in my environment, and what do I need to do to lock it down, shut it down, or so forth. So hopefully that gives a good overview of how that's broken down differently within the industry.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we'll wrap up. I know we're bumping up on time here. Certainly appreciate everyone's attention today. Rich, Cam, and Logan, thank you again. As we wrap up here, folks, feel free to follow up with us. We are offering a complimentary 2-hour SIEM modernization consultation. We're not a high pressure sales organization, so you can kind of be at ease and know that you're getting more of a consultative approach here. Whether you move forward with us or not, our objective here is to help you see value and move in the right direction for your business. In that, we'll look at your existing tooling strategy, help you look at a roadmap or a path forward to make sure that your organization is taking advantage of all of the latest and greatest cloud native, Gen AI focused tooling to improve your security posture. That being said, I'll close out by just saying thanks again. We do have 2 webinars upcoming, one on securing your on-premises networks, leveraging cloud-native tools, as well as securing Gen AI workloads in the cloud, which we'll be co-hosting with the Google security team. So look out for maybe a follow-up on those, but definitely reach out to myself at david.cutter@ditoweb.com or via our website, ditoweb.com/contact. We would love to engage in further discussion. And again, appreciate everyone's time, and hopefully we'll all talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.